Have you ever wondered how to take and turn it into In this video, I'm going to show you how you can take your stock jazz piano voicings and transform them so that you can play in more of a hip hop or a lo-fi style. And just as a disclaimer here, you definitely don't need every single one of these 7 techniques in order to sound like hip hop, but you definitely want to have some of them or maybe even a majority of them if you really want to sound like you're playing in the hip hop style. So let's go ahead and get into it. And the first one is about the piano sound. Straight ahead jazz piano is typically played on an acoustic piano, and so a lot of the recordings that you will hear from the 50s and 60s are going to be played on that acoustic piano. But if you want to sound more like in a hip hop or even a rock or just even some more modern electronic styles, you're definitely going to be wanting to get that electric piano sound occasionally. Again, you don't have to have all of these things, but that electric piano sound really goes into this style of hip hop a lot more easily. And so we'll typically switch to an electric piano sound. And so this is a Rhodes sound. I'm using an electronic instrument from Arturia called the Stage 73, but most keyboards are going to have an option for an electric piano sound. And this is usually going to be a Fender Rhodes. Fender Rhodes was a type of keyboard where you had little metal bars, kind of like a vibraphone, that are being lightly struck, and so it gets this nice warm sound that really fills up the space a little bit more than a piano does in terms of the sonic space. I would switch to a Rhodes. And so that's the first one. The second one is that the chord progressions that you play when you're doing straight ahead jazz are going to be different usually than the chord progressions that you play when you're playing in hip hop. So there's a lot of more cyclical, shorter progressions in hip hop than there are in jazz. A lot of times jazz progressions go for an entire 8 measures. There might be several key changes, and this is a little bit less common. Another thing that's really common in hip hop chord progressions is to use borrowed chords. So these are chords that are not in the key of whatever key you're in. So for this video, I'm going to be using this chord progression: C major 7, going to a B minor 7, and then going to a B flat major 6. And why does this sound a little bit more like the style of hip hop? Well, we're in the key of C major, or at least that's our first chord of the chord progression. And immediately when we go, and if we were playing this in a straight ahead jazz context, you would expect that you might have like a 2-5-1 going there, or even maybe if you're playing a tune like Afternoon in Paris, you might start immediately changing keys. But hip-hop chord progressions tend to use chords that are not really functional, meaning that it's not just a 2-5-1 going to another place. They're chords for the sake of the sound of the chord. And here, the B minor 7 here has this F sharp that's not in the chord, and it sounds, really rich here. And then immediately we go to another chord that is not in the key of C major, which is B flat major 6. This is really just a 2-measure chord progression. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So this is just a 2-measure chord progression that you could repeat for an entire section. And then when you get to another section, maybe it's the pre-chorus or the chorus, it would typically switch to a slightly different chord progression. But these types of chord progressions are what we would typically find in a more hip-hop setting. Now, a lot of times you'll find that people will play a jazz standard in a hip-hop style, and they'll keep all the same chords, and that's totally fine. And one that's done a lot is like My Funny Valentine. So even even though you're just taking a jazz standard and you're kind of putting the style onto it, the chords aren't really what make this feel like a hip-hop tune. It's more the other parts, maybe the sounds that you're using, or the groove that the drummer's playing, or the way that you're playing the chords. It's these other 6 elements that I'm going to be talking about that really contribute to it feeling like a hip-hop tune. But you know, these different types of chord progressions that are more common in hip-hop are really going to make it sound more like that style. So that's the second one, and for this video we're using this C major 7, once again going to a B minor 7, going to a B flat major 6. So these are very much stock jazz piano voicings, and just as a little plug, if you are following along and these types of voicings are unfamiliar to you, I have a free ebook that you can go check out. You can go ahead and download either before or after you watch the rest of this video, where you can get really familiar with this type of voicing with a shell in the left hand and then a full chord in the right hand, getting really comfortable with playing that in every key. So that's the first two, the sound of the piano, and in this case we're using a Fender Rhodes or an electric keyboard sound, which is typically just going to be a Fender Rhodes sound, and then the second thing being the chord progressions that you use. Now we're getting into the actual voicings that we're using, and you notice as I have been playing this, I've just been casually doing it as I've been kind of playing the style. But if we're playing in a straight ahead jazz setting, a lot of times our chords are going to be played together. And a lot of this is because we're in the rhythm section, we're trying to keep the groove going, and that high energy feeling with the rhythms that we choose in straight ahead jazz are really characteristic with, you know, full, you know, chords that are together. But when we're trying to get this more laid back feeling, we're much more likely to play the chords more loosely. And so the next tip, or the next part of playing in this style, is that you want to get comfortable with rolling the chords. And if I'm playing in a groove, I want to get comfortable with playing rolling into the chord and then rolling out of the chord, or starting on the downbeat and rolling out of it. I want to get comfortable with rolling up, rolling down, maybe rolling from the middle out, maybe rolling from the outside in. Let's just see how these ones would sound. So I'm going to roll up to start out with. I'm rolling into the beat, right? So I'm trying to have this top note land on the beat. Now I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm having both hands roll upward at the same time. Feels a little bit messier, which is really characteristic of this style. Now I'm going to try rolling downward. This is going to feel a little bit different. I'm aligning the bass note with the rhythm. So I'm putting that third chord on the and of 4. Now I can try rolling out. Right, so I'm kind of going like this and rolling outward, right? I can also roll inward. Again, it doesn't really matter the direction. I just want you to experiment with these different things and get comfortable with it. So then we can also try just kind of rolling very freely rather than thinking about it as up or down. We're just going to think about kind of filling in the notes a little bit more chaotically. Can even re-strike some of the notes, so I can go like up and then back down. Right, getting comfortable with some of those. Right, so all of that contributes contributes to this feeling of just being a little bit more laid back and getting to a place where we're just kind of playing, we're kind of letting the chords fall into place rather than feeling like we have to really nail those chords exactly when they happen, which would sound again like this. Now there are going to be places in the song, whatever song you're playing, where you're going to want to play them a little bit more straight up, but once again that more laid back feeling comes from rolling into the chords a little bit more casually. Okay, so that is the third thing. The fourth thing is that we really want to get comfortable with playing partial chords and maybe playing them in between where we're playing the full chords. So here's what that would sound like. So rather than playing, my full voicing here is a shell in the left hand, I've got the root in the seventh, and then I've got my full C major 7 chord right here. And if I want to play partial chords, I could just leave out the bass note, right? And just play that. And if I'm playing with the bass player, then I would have the bass player. They would be playing the root, so I don't need to play it, right? I could even leave out the top note as well. Right? Of myself here, but the next thing that we want to do is get comfortable with arpeggiating the chords to start creating some more movement between the chords, creating some melodies. So something like this. That's the first 5. Once again, to recap just real quickly before we go on, our first 5 are the sound of the keyboard, switching from a just traditional acoustic piano to something with a little bit more texture. Now, you could just add some effects to the piano, but in this case, we're just choosing to do a Rhodes sound or an electric piano sound. We've got our chord progression that is a little bit different for hip-hop, and then we have rolling the chords. We have a few different chord techniques. So we have rolling the chords, we have playing partial chords, we're not playing your entire voicing. So whatever stock voicing you're using, let's say it's a 4 or 5 note voicing, it could even be, something like this where you've got, you've just got the full chord in your left hand. You could, also roll these. You could play only part of the chord. And that is all fair game. And then we have arpeggiating the chords, and that especially works when we have both hands working together and we can start to create melodies. Right? And then 6, I've already been doing this a little bit, but using grace notes in your chords. So when we're playing a more stock voicing like this is really just a C major 7. I'm not even using a 9th. I'm just playing it straight up, and it's really nice with this rub in the middle between the C and the B. But I can start to use, maybe a finger that I'm not using, and I can roll into or use a grace note into one of the chord tones. Right? So in this case, I'm rolling into those chord tones. And I'm even coming back down sometimes. Right? And in this case, I am playing a B flat major 6 chord, but I can go up to the 7th and then back to the 6th if I want. Or I can just stay there. These are all options. options that sound very stylistic. So if I'm using some chords that are if I'm using a voicing that's using fewer of my fingers, like let's say I'm doing something like this, where I'm omitting the seventh, I'm not using the seventh in my right hand because I already have it in my left hand, I can do something like this. Once again, I'm using those grace notes, but I'm now doing it in the middle of the chord. So using grace notes both at the top of the voicing or in the middle of the voicing, that all contributes to this feeling of kind of falling into the chord. Right? That helps it feel like it's very smooth and we're just falling in to what the chord is. So that's the sixth thing. And then finally, the seventh is that we can use fill. So especially on this longer chord that goes for an entire measure, I can fill in the middle. And right now I'm just thinking about using the chord tone. So this is a B flat major 6. And when I'm using these more active more active melodies, it feels a little bit more like jazz lines, and you know, that's fine. We don't want to go too far into the jazz language when we're playing this style. We don't want to start playing like bebop language that might not fit exactly, but definitely we can use some arpeggiations. And just create some melodies between. So after you've done all of that and we put everything together, now we have our 7 techniques for taking our stock jazz piano voicings and turning it into more of a hip-hop sound. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to go ahead and like and subscribe so you can support the channel. I'd love to be able to continue making more content like this, and that will help out tremendously. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next one.